Ignition system failures are common. I think that's, for one, because the stock CDI is just a piece of crap, and two, because the stator coil is easily burned out, and its life is made harder because the engine vibrates so much and because it gets too hot. And it's getting too hot because of the advanced ignition. And we already went over why it vibrates. So if you get rid of those two problems, you'll make the ignition system more reliable. But there's a video I want to, that shows, there it is. Bikeberry has a really nice video, and in it they emphasize the importance of taking the shellac off of this part, the frame of the stator coil. And that is because that where the screw head contacts right here, well, any of the 4 points, is the ground path to this coil. The energy goes from this coil to the CDI, to the high voltage spark plug coil, to the spark plug, through the cylinder, through the cases, and then through those screws on back to the coil. Electricity is always designed as a loop. And so, what the hell? Why did they leave the shellac on these, on the coil frames? So that's one of the first things you have to do, is take that shellac off. Make sure those screws are nice and tight. And probably another stressor for the coil would be if your wires are not soldered to the CDI, or if you don't have like really good connectors. If you just twist those wires together, forget it. That's a shitty connection. It's exposed to moisture. It's going to get corrosion in there. It's going to start losing its contact. And anytime you get an open contact, all of a sudden the voltage across the coil jumps. And those wires are so very thin, they don't have much insulation, and so the voltage can jump the insulation and cause a complete short, or open the circuit, or a partial. So that's important to have those connections correct. The cylinder head mating surface is not flat, and that is important because if you're getting blow by there, for one, it's ugly. It's put spooge all over your cylinder. It looks like hell. Looks like you don't know anything about engines. So please take care of it. This is a graph showing the power increase by raising the compression ratio. The bike comes with a low compression ratio, and a problem with the aftermarket heads is they raise the compression ratio too much, and that causes too much pressure of the rings against the cylinder, because that plating is very fragile. They did not do a good job of plating the inside of the cylinder. The chrome plating that's there, the higher you raise the compression, the more likely it is for that plating to start coming off. And this is showing out here that you got a 2 to 3% horsepower increase for every 1 point of compression ratio increase. So if you're talking about an engine of 2 horsepower, 1% would be 0.02, 2% would be 0.04 horsepower. Let's say you raise it 2 compression points. You're talking about 0.08 horsepower. Maybe a tenth of a horsepower. Do you think you're going to feel that? Really? Do you think? So this is what I did to plane the cylinder head. More perfectly would be taken to a machine shop and let them lay that down. But if you have a good fiber gasket, which is what I recommend, I do not recommend continuing to use the aluminum gasket. It will take up the fiber gasket will take up for any inconsistencies in your work in trying to make this flatter. So if you hold the corners down on both sides, I usually put a foot over here and a hand here, and then move that so that this doesn't bunch up while you're doing it. Move it in a circle. That will take down the high spots on the aluminum there. There is too much distance between the ring ends. If you take this top end apart and you take one of the rings off the piston and you stick it inside the cylinder and you measure the gap that it has between the ring ends, you'll see that it's about 3 times the amount of what is normal for a 2-stroke. This is another one of those what the hell moments. So, almost all this stuff you will not find on any good 4-stroke engine for the motorized bicycle. But the problem with the 4-stroke is that they usually come in the same sizes as the 2-stroke. And a 2-stroke, when you take care of all of its little idiosyncrasies to bring its performance up, it will have twice the horsepower as a 4-stroke. Which is why I would still prefer a 2-stroke. Because where I lived in Ecuador, there was really steep hills. And I was not going to be pushing that bike up the hills. Forget that. So, on my site, I have piston and rings recommended to replace the standard motorcycle ones that will take care of that ring end problem. What happens if you have too much ring end gap? You have compression loss. And it's not like you can increase the compression with a smaller head volume to make up for that, because it's just, I don't know why, it's just you're just pushing and pulling. So if you're really going to be perfectionist about this engine, replace the piston and rings. Replace the standard ones with non-standard ones. Like I said, the cylinder plating comes off easily after you increase the compression. So, my friends, I forgot to mention that 135 is about the highest I would recommend as far as pressure when you increase the compression ratio. If you go to my site, you will see that I've covered just about any imaginable subject about this engine. It's all there for your benefit. Make good use of it.